That's it. I mean, that's it. So we don't have much gold in Fort Knox. I mean, there really isn't. It's easy to get, high quality. Oh, I can back up my truck, fill it up. If you're the appropriate people, they'll do it. But there's much more gold in the world out there in nuggets that we haven't found yet. Nice big nuggets. We just haven't found them. But you know what? Most of the gold is actually up here. Most of the gold is as dust. At least most of the gold that we can access is gold dust. When you've taken the nuggets, then you have to go for lower quality gold, which is gold dust. And that's where most of the gold comes out of most gold rushes. Most of the gold in the world is actually out there on the Capitol lawn or in the ocean. It's molecular gold. We could get it. It would involve reverse lasing. It ain't worth it. So the great thing is that as you increase your efficiency of extraction, you actually get economies of scale. There's enormously more of bad stuff. So, for example, the Roman Republic started off with rape, loot, and pillage. The trouble with rape, loot, and pillage is you can only do it once, because then you've got the gold. So what you're going to do now, people? So, what you have to do is to go out from the centres where the gold was, the rich guys, and get to the peasants. There's not much in a peasant, but there's lots of them. And you tax them. So the Roman Empire was a taxation system, much more efficient extraction. And so there's a series of interesting developments here. One of them is when you start a new technology, it's local. It's on the hot spots. It's where the gold is. If you move to something more efficient, it's going to be more diffuse because the bad stuff is everywhere. So you have to move everywhere to get it. Also, the good stuff doesn't last long. So systems relying upon good stuff don't last long because the good stuff gets used up. And this causes us then to move to the bad stuff. There's lots more bad stuff. You get economies of scale. And while it's really heavy lifting to pull the good stuff out of the bad stuff, while it's really expensive and hard to do, if you can get an economy of scale going, you're in great shape.
What do you mean by economy of scale?
Well, for example, Smith & Wesson was pretty much the first gun made in the Industrial Revolution. And it was made very differently than all other guns. Up until that time, every trigger, every hammer, every barrel was made to fit with the particular trigger, the particular barrel, da-da-da-da-da-da. By 1850, you can now start the machine tool down to 1,000th of an inch. At that point, now it's really a pain in the butt to work with 1,000th of an inch. So it's expensive. You've got to train people. It's difficult, right? But the great thing is, you just turn a handle and you can turn out a whole bunch of parts to all Smith & Wessons, and you just stick them together. And so Smith & Wesson suddenly become very cheap, even though making the parts individually is expensive, making the parts in aggregate is not. And therefore the Industrial Revolution was much less a matter of motive power. I mean, that was in there. The important thing was, you could do mass production. and if you've got a steam engine to help push the mass production, that helps. But the economies of scale come from the planning and the care and the precision. Does that help?
Yeah, so basically, is mass production a decent synonym for an economy of scale?
No, there's lots of economies of scale. For example, the termites are getting an economy of scale. That is to say, you can live in wood, you don't have to go very far to get your food because you're living in your food. The cost of it is you eat your home. So what could you do? Well, you could live in feces and saliva, that's what those big, National Geographic images of termites. You know how big those guys are? 10% of terrestrial biomass, animal biomass, is those guys. I mean, wow. And what they're doing then is, if you're prepared to take lower quality stuff, you've got to hold down forest for it. It's not a little cubic foot of wood in which you're living. You've suddenly got lots of it, so you get the economies of scale of specializing in workers to go out and gather and da-da-da-da-da. So it's not just capitalism here. I mean, animals and societies do the same thing. You'll find me flipping comfortably back and forth between Byzantium on the one hand and termites that eat soil on the other. I mean, they're both downgrade systems. So when it comes to livability, they're just heading down the hill. And the greenies are saying, well, we should, yeah, and you even used the word should. And you know, it's okay, everybody else uses it too.
I'm starting to regret inviting you.
But should doesn't help. It is that matters, you know? Because that's the difficulty with social systems. I mean, with natural science, you've only got the Clinton problem. It depends upon what the definition of is. But if you're in social science, there's a whole bunch of ought. Now, don't get me wrong, there are values in is, lots of values in is. But ought is up your nose sideways. I mean, it's nasty. And so, as a result, ought is very tightly connected to a narrative. In biological science, you're sort of okay. Hans Krebs finds the Krebs cycle, and he's still got that narrative up there, which is evolution. And he says, you know what, whatever I find down here is going to apply everywhere. And you know what, he was right. So he's got his problems, moving between levels, shifting definitions, all that difficulty. But it's not as nasty as social systems. For example, social systems, economists know that increasing the gross national product, all ships rise. What a good thing, right? So let's increase gross national product. Oh, so if that's such a good idea in New York, let's do it in Grenada. What happens? Bunch of World Bank money comes in. The white guys go down there, get paid with the money and send it home. Whereupon the country is in debt. They've got an infrastructure which they probably can't particularly use. And there's environmental damage. What went wrong? It's the wrong story. Ultimately, it's the narrative that matters. And so, reductionist knowledge is not value free, but you can usually get your way back from reductionist knowledge to the larger narrative. Social systems is sort of replicant knowledge. Remember Blade Runner? The replicants? These guys were really good at fighting interplanetary wars. The trouble is, they were really strong and had no compunction about anything. If you want somebody to blow up a planet, one of those guys will think nothing of it. The thing is, though, they don't have a history. They don't have a narrative. And so, I mean, you may remember the movie starts off where there's this guy with bulgy eyes being interviewed, and they're looking in his eye to see his emotions, and some guy's casually interviewing him. And he says, okay.
The turtle.
What?
Why aren't you helping the turtle?
Yeah, well, they said, yes, you anticipate the story. See, a convincing story is the thing that we need here. Which is, he's sitting there, and they say, okay, so there's a turtle. What's a turtle? Well, it's sort of like a tortoise, but, terrestrial. Okay, right. So you're in the desert, and there's this turtle, and it's upside down. What do? And he's sitting there. I mean, what would you do?
What's a turtle?
That's Mr. Chang. You can explain that for me.
He was
What would
like,
you do?
you're not helping. You're like, the turtle is on its back. You can flip it over, but you're not flipping it over. Why aren't you flipping it over, Leon? And Leon's just staring at it.
Yeah, no, and Leon doesn't know what to do because he doesn't have a story. Because these guys are created adults. They would be. Don't imagine that they're not powerful. Oh no, they're good at interplanetary wars, so they have to program them so they die within 4 years. Because one of those guys gets loose, 4 years is plenty of time for him to do a lot of damage. So they're all programmed to die. And the reason is they don't have a narrative. That's what's wrong with GNP and Grenada. It's the wrong narrative. Economists mostly don't have the narrative or realize that what they're saying is much more tightly coupled with narrative than you would think. So if we turn to the central issue here, which is thermodynamics, gradient, and this is livability. People just do what they want to do. You can't stop Americans from consuming gasoline. You increase the efficiency of engines 10 years after Jimmy Carter, and what do? They invent the SUV. Right? And now they're inventing the Prius, and that's bad too. I mean, good, bad. I mean, there are problems. So you've got livability. Then you've got sustainability. Sustainability is, I think, coded. Sustainability is plans. Livability doesn't have a plan. It says, well, yeah, I know you told me that, but, they'll run out after my lifetime. It'll be okay. The greenies get so upset with me. Because I used to own, it was great too, I had a Cadillac. Oh, I loved it. It was a great big car, and it had big wheelbase, and it was a smooth ride. It knew how much it was raining and would change the wind speed. It knew how fast I was going, so how much background noise, and it would adjust the noise on the radio. It was great. Why'd I buy it? I got it for $5,000. It was a 4-year-old Cadillac. I got it for $5,000. It's me and the pimps. That's it. That's my competition. And nobody wanted to buy these things. It takes a long time to get $10,000 extra gasoline put into that machine. So, if I didn't buy it, it really would make no difference. That would simply drive the price of these Cadillacs down a little further till somebody else got it. So it doesn't make any difference. Don't get me wrong. I really like the way Britain charges $10 a gallon for gasoline, and it's about time we did it here. I want the price of gasoline so damn high, nobody else can ride the Cadillac. But with $4 or $3 or $2 a gallon, come on. People will continue to drive Cadillacs, and Priuses aren't going to help things. Yeah.
So you're more in favor of changing the system so it makes it not livable for people to not be.
No.
Like instead of saying you should buy a Prius, bad Cadillac driver, tisk tisk, you're more into the.
Well, what I'm saying is you can't stop people. You can't
drive.
Stop people buying Priuses because they want to drive, and the only way they can drive is if they buy a Prius.
Yeah.
And they're going to buy a Prius.
Right.
So they can continue to drive.
Right.
So they can continue to suck down the very last of the gasoline. Right.
Right.
They're going to do that. You can't stop them. They're heading towards the cliff. Then they turn. They're going to go, oh my God, and then, and all of a sudden the price of gasoline is $15 a gallon. Why? Because the market has done it. And the Republicans love the market. I don't think they're going to like the market when it's $15 a gallon, but it will be that because there ain't any more gasoline. And at that point, we're going to go, oh my God. Now, we would have been smart to have done this, but no, they did that. The only thing we could do is to get the deck chairs out of the way. So that when they turn the corner, they've got a clear deck, Maybe they can make it. So the issue is, accept the fact that livability is profligate. It always will be. Biological systems do it. Evolution does it. Evolution never screws up on Jevons paradox. There's nothing in it for evolution. Human beings do Jevons paradox. They widen highways and then wonder why they fill up again. Because you didn't get rid of the gradient. So if you've got a profligate system, making it more efficient just means it's more efficiently profligate. But the nice thing about livability is it's labile. Livability, let's run a contrast here. Let's look at the English hedgerow. I have a whole bunch of screeching greeny colleagues over in Britain too. And they say, oh, the British heritage, the wonderful hedgerow. And I like hedgerows too, Have little beasties in them and nests and stuff.